Welcome to the Booktrovert Babes podcast, where two friends decided to bring our dramatic conversations about books here for your entertainment. I'm Rubik's mom of 5 and a baby reader just entering my book era.
And I'm Taylor, mom of 2 and a well-seasoned book era veteran. And on today's podcast, we are talking about completing the series and whether or not you have to. If you don't want to, is that okay? Just how do we feel about series in general? Rubik's?
I have to finish it. I have to keep going. It's one long story. It's just broken up for convenience. So yes, I have to finish the series. I'm a completionist. It feels unfinished otherwise. I want to know how the story ended up. I want to know where the characters end up. I don't like the cheesiness of like an epilogue where it's like, this is how they ended up. But at the same time, that's where I get the satisfaction from the end of a story, is knowing how things really ended up. I need that, and they lived happily ever after. Or, and they lived miserably for the rest of their lives. Whatever it is, I just need to know. Whatever it is, I just need to know.
I don't have that. If I want to know, I'll cheat and I'm going to look it up. I'll look up what it was.
No.
I don't have that in me where I feel like I have to complete a series. If I don't like it, or if it's been too long of a gap in between, say, releases, if it's a newer series that isn't done yet, I'm going to be so honest with you. If SJM takes too much longer for this next book of ACOTAR, I may not pick it up. I just don't know what it is.
You wouldn't.
I didn't like the last book. And honestly, depending on who the pairing is for the next one, I don't care. If it's the pair I don't want it to be, I might not read it, and I'm okay with that. I'll just look for the spoilers on TikTok.
Okay, so have you ever stopped reading you read one book and then you just Googled the endings of the rest of them?
Yeah.
No, what series?
There was a Peter Pan retelling that I DNF'd. I've talked about that in an old podcast episode, that I really couldn't see the direction it was going, but it was so poorly written that I could not put myself through that again. So I just looked it up as to what the direction of it was going. I'm trying to think. There's another one I did it for, but it was a while ago, but I can't think of it. Because I'm not always the most invested with series that are one story told through every single book, I kind of avoid them. So Fourth Wing is the same. If it starts, I didn't love the second one. It was still great. I'm still reading Onyx Storm when it comes out in January. If I don't love it though, if it
I was getting scared for a second there. I was about to be like, I'm sorry, excuse me?
No, we're reading Onyx Storm together. But Fourth Wing is 5 for me. It was fantastic. Iron Flame was still good, but a little bit of a letdown. If Onyx Storm is good, but even it's still just kind of dwindling as a series for me, you may have to force me to read the rest of the series with you, because if it just loses me, then I don't want to keep reading it. And those are some girthy books to force.
That's fair, yeah. I just can't do that. I've got to know, even if it's oh, these people get together, these people do this. It's but how? How did that go? Because I would be freaking out. Or how did their friends let that happen? Things like that. I have to know the how and the why along with the what.
Isn't it interesting though how that worked? I don't care, but I'm easily the nosiest person between the two of us. I want to know everything about everybody's business. I'm a lockbox. You can tell me something and no one will know. I'm very good at keeping secrets, keeping that gossip to myself. However, I want to know it. I'm a nosy bitch. You're not that nosy, but you have a completion thing. It's interesting how that works, because I want to know everything, but when it comes to a series, I don't care to read it. I'll look it up. I'll find the spoilers. I'll look on TikTok. I'll look on Spark Notes. If I'm not invested, I don't care. I'll just look it up. That's partially why I'm scared to start Throne of Glass.
Really? Do you think you won't like it?
Ass here. I am nervous. I'm not the biggest, which is weird to say, because again, I loved ACOTAR. I loved the first 3 books. I am nervous to start it because one, it's 8 books and it's some girthy towards the end 8th books. But I am nervous that what if I hate it and I just started this big ass series that everybody else loves? I don't need to finish it if I hate it, but then I'm going to feel bad because everyone who's read it.
Well, if you don't care though, why do you feel bad?
Mostly because of how many of my friends who have read it want me to read it.
Yeah, that's fair. If you don't finish ACOTAR, I'm going to be so sad because You made me love ACOTAR.
Okay, but here's the thing. Without any spoilers, the female we know is the lead of the next book. If she is with one person, that one, I'm not reading it. I do not want them together. I want him with someone else. It would feel like such a cop-out, and I'd be so disappointed if that's the way it went. Like, it just is, it almost feels too obvious, too forced, and I just don't want to read that when it just meh.
Any other series, fine. But that one, I'm gonna cry.
But we don't know how many books that series is going to be. That's the other thing that is kind of up in the air for me, is we don't actually know how many she's ending with. Because it's rumored that it's 2 or 3 more books and 1 or 2 more novellas. But there's no set number of what's left. That's a lot of books for me to be stuck dedicated to. And it takes the woman 2 to 3 years in between books. I'm going to be in my 50s by the time this woman finishes the series at this rate. That's a long-ass dedication time for me. At least with this one, we've already popped out 2 books in a year. The third one's coming out. Like, if it's a quick enough turnaround rate where the quality is still good, we're not screwing with the quality of the book because the turnaround is too quick, I don't mind it because I don't have to wait too long. But years in between books, that's too much.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. I'm already going to have a really hard time with a big space between Iron Flame and Onyx Storm. But I mean, I remedy that by just reading them again.
But here's the thing. There's only 2 books currently out of that series. We've read Fourth Wing a couple. You've read it twice?
I've read Iron Flame 3 times. I've read Fourth Wing 6 times.
I'm sorry, what? I've read Fourth Wing
I am not
twice.
A rereader.
That's why I'm shocked. I've read Fourth Wing twice, technically. I read it the first time and then I audiobooked quickly for my refresher before Iron Flame. And then I read Iron Flame, and I'm planning to reread it before Onyx Storm comes out. What? That's so many rereads, Rubik's. You don't have time for this. You've got a TBR. Come on. That's the thing with the Empyrean series. There's not that many books out, and I feel like if you just read the one before it, it helps with the one coming up. I don't know what's going to happen with the ACOTAR series of like what plot points do I need to reread to remember for the next one, because I somewhat remember the bigger plot points. But also, I am not rereading that book. It is thick as hell, and it took me forever to read it.
What about listening to the graphic audio?
Are you paying for them?
No, I'm just like, in general, hypothetically.
Sure, if they were for free.
I mean, I don't think are there graphic audios for Iron Flame yet? I know there are for Fourth Wing. They have both of them. There's 2 for Fourth Wing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they have any for Iron Flame yet.
I don't know. I know it was in the works one of the last times.
It's been a while since I've checked, though, so I don't know.
The longer Miss Ma'am makes me wait for this next book, the shorter time frame she has for me to be interested in what happens next.
I think that's fair.
Also, to be fair, of the 3 sisters, this is the sister I care about the least. Which, and I don't like the last one, but I still cared about her story and the guy that she's with. I don't really care about this next sister, to be so honest. I think that's part of the issue.
I think for me, like for this specific, and this happens to me in other series too. This sister in the ACOTAR series, I have been waiting for something to happen. She's been so quiet.
That's what it is.
For so long. And I've been waiting for something to happen. I've been waiting to get a chance to get inside her head. I'm hoping that there's like kind of how the duologies overlapped with Johnny and Shannon and then Joey and Aoife in the Boys of Tommen series, how Joey's book started from before. Yeah. I'm kind of hoping for a little bit of an overlap in the timeline to get more into her mindset and what's been going on in her head, because everybody's been talking about her saying like, oh, she's been so keeping to herself. She's been so quiet. And I want to know why. I've been waiting for that. So I'm excited. I don't love her.
No.
But I don't know enough about her. And that's why I'm like, I gotta see what's going on with her, because it's weird to have one character in this found family that we've been reading about for 5 books. It's weird to have one character who really doesn't have much to say. She's so reserved, so quiet. And it's like, but why? Why is she so different than the rest of them? That's
like one of the only reasons why I'm still holding on. I'm still going to try. unless the pairing is not what I want, then I'm going to be real bitchy about it. But in the nicest way, is as interesting as watching paint dry on purpose. That's not like the
It is definitely on purpose, but that's why I'm certain that Sarah J. Maas, the way she writes, I mean, that's how she writes her books. Like, not that the whole book is like watching paint dry, but the whole book is a slow crawl, and then the last bit of the book is when you're thrown into the fire. And I feel like that's what she's kind of been doing with that character too. At least that's what I'm hoping for. That's kind of what I'm expecting. If that doesn't happen, I'll finish the book to finish the series. But I will be disappointed.
There's still more books coming after that one. That's the thing. What if her book is so bad and you're so disappointed the character development is not what you wanted? Are you going to keep going when there's projected a minimum of 3 more books after this one?
Do you know what you just said to me talking about this specific series? What if book 6 is just like reading book 1? Yes, I'm going to finish the series because I felt like that about book 1.
What if it's worse than book 1?
I gotta finish it. Here's a question. What about the series that you love? Okay. Where you're invested, you love them all. Do you take breaks between books in the series, or do you blow through them?
Depends on how the one before ended, or how emotionally in my feelings am I. With the Harry Potter series, I read them as soon as they came out because obviously at the age that I was, if they were coming out, I was reading with each release. If they had all been out at the same time, that would have been a series that I read back to back. And if I took a break, it was just like a quick little, I need something fluffy because of the war and all that kind of aspect to it. With Boys of Tommen, I read 1 and 2 back to back because you have to. I had to take a break between 2 and 3. I needed to recuperate. I needed to cry into a pillow.
I've taken a huge break between book 4 and book 5.
Yeah. And I did take a break from 4 and 5 only because I had just finished 4 and 5 had just come out, and it was that same like I took a bigger break from 2 to 3 than I did from 4 to 5, but I just needed to recuperate a little bit.
Yeah.
ACOTAR, I read 1, 2, 3, 4 back to back to back. I didn't stop. I just kept going because I was so into the story.
I went 1 through 5 all in the same month, back to back.
Yeah. The novella pissed me off, as you know, it seems to do for everybody. And then I just wasn't that invested with 5, so that one took me a while to read, but I did have a pretty big gap in between 4 and 5 for that one.
And then you read it because of me.
I did. You influenced me to go back into it. And it was, again, I love that book. I love so many characters. It's just that one character I sometimes had hard. It was also written in third person, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves in books. I hate books written in third person, especially when the previous 4 books were written in first person. It made no sense to me that it switched. I hated that.
See, I thought it made sense because it was written in somebody else's first person. So it made sense for me for that book to be about somebody else, so it was in the third person. That made sense to me.
I just don't like third person books. They're
because it kind of felt like the original narrator was telling us, you know, like, meanwhile, back at the ranch, this is what's going on over here with this people, you know?
Ranch.
Don't you remember those shows where they used to
I do. I just am trying to think of the 2 characters of this book at the ranch. That's what made me giggle. Please. Please.
I mean, they went to a different location. You know, they're doing all these different things. And it kind of makes sense that the original narrator who spoke in first person through the first 4 books is telling us this is what happened for them when they left.
Yeah.
That made sense to me. It didn't bother me that it was third person.
I'm trying to think of other series I have that aren't standalone series that are like a plot driven. I don't read a ton like that. Yeah. Mostly my series are interconnected standalone. But yeah, I can't, for the most part, I think I would say I take breaks depending on the emotional turmoil that a book has put me through, or if the ending is cliffhanger, you're like, I have to get to the next one.
So the series that I've read this year, which I can recall them all because I'm still such a baby reader. I have so fewer. I have the Empyrean series, so Fourth Wing, Iron Flame. I have the ACOTAR series. I have the Black Witch Chronicles and the Boys of Tommen series. Trying to think if there's I finished the Mindfuck series.
Oh, so
I'm trying to think if there are any
Oh,
other series.
I did read that one. I read that last year, but I read that back.
That was back to back.
Days. I was like, there's
Okay.
not a. It's like watching a Criminal Minds episode. You're not going to pause
Yeah.
20 minutes in and then wait a couple of days to like. No,
Exactly.
Blew
That's
through
what I'm
that.
saying. That's how I am. Like I am a professional binge watcher when it comes to like shows. I will sit through that like it's my job. Like I will go easily eight episodes in a sitting. Easily. I'll be doing other things while I'm watching them,
like,
but no, I mean I'll be doing other things when I'm
Yeah.
watching them, but especially at night, I will easily binge, 5 or more episodes in, when I go to bed, just because I have to keep going. I want to keep going. So I think that's fed into how I'm doing these book series too. Every single one of those series I mentioned, back to back, except for The Boys of Tommen. I've taken this break between 4 and 5 because I knew that it would bother me.
Yeah,
right now.
We have proof from previous podcasts. I've told you to take a break. One, for triggers that I know are in that book. Also, just you need to recover from the Lynch family story. Like, you need to recuperate so that way you
completely.
can have your heart broken again for someone else. But
Stop.
it's very much how into the series I am.
Mhm.
If there's cliffhangers, if the overall plot I'm like dying to get into. So yeah, the Mindfuck series I definitely read back to back to back. And then everything else, yeah, if I've kind of gone over the ones like that I've read that are like a true plot driven series, it's like a 50-50 that I've either read back to back or have taken a break. I'm really
I
not
think so
serious
far,
series.
every single one every single series I've touched, I've read the entire thing, except for
Hockey Gods.
Hockey Gods. Hockey Gods, I read the first book.
Mhm.
Took me a month to get through it. It was very difficult. We've already talked about that, though. It was because of what I was going through at the time. I wasn't in a good headspace to read that book.
Do you know what's funny about that? That series is why in the 5-person group chat, we do it once a month. Because Brutal Obsession was so rough, Haley said, I don't think I can read book 2 until next month. So then we read
Mhm.
Devious Obsession. That was even worse. No one else even joined us in on that. Like, Tish hopped out. That series is why we started on the first of every month, we start the next book. So when it
Mhm.
comes to series that we read as a group of friends, technically the series that we've been choosing are interconnected standalone series. So we don't have to read them in order. I mean, Tish didn't even
Right.
read book 2 of that series.
Mhm.
And I don't think she's reading book 2 of the series that we're currently reading. She, I think, dropped out. But the other series, the Penelope Douglas Devil's Night series that we all just started together,
Yes.
is also technically, I think, is technically considered an interconnected standalone series.
because
but-
it's different people, right?
Yes, but there's that you need bits and bobbles from this person's book to make sense into this person's book that then so there's,
Right.
we know all the couples are getting together. So, but like,
Yeah.
there's factors that you need. So I don't know how the Devil's Night series, if that's considered a series or an interconnected standalone series. But when we did the Hockey Gods, that's interconnected. You don't have to read those in order, but it helps. And then with the Chestnut Spring series, I think everyone dropped out except for Haley and I. But so technically with those series, we've taken breaks. We read it together on
Is
the
that the
first.
country one that you read?
Yeah, that's the Cowboy series.
I want to read that.
We're on the second book. So
I have to wait till after spooky season to read it, though,
yeah,
because I am in a mode right now.
you really are. You're killing it with the spookies right now.
I am.
I'm so proud of you because you just started the first book of our series and you finished it on time.
Hmm.
You were last, but you were only last by a day.
I know. Instead of like a week and a half.
I was going to say, normally you're like, I finished. And we're like, it's 2-3 weeks later. You finished, I think it was, we all finished within like 24 hours of
Well,
each
'cause
other, and then
you
did the
guys-
right after.
I don't remember when it was said that we were actually going to start it. And
On the
so
first,
I just remember we're going to do it in October.
you and Mel had all the details to the buddy read except for the day we started.
Except for the day we started, yeah.
Which was like, I don't know, I just thought it was funny because we kept saying, all right, on the first, we're reading Corrupt.
Yeah,
So then
and
three of us started, and I still didn't finish first.
I don't know if I
Actually,
even
Haley
read
started the
first.
day
I think
before.
I just read October, but which was fine, except that I had started a book already. And so I was like trying to rush and get through the book I was reading so that I could start that one. Because I didn't want to start. Sometimes I will read 2 books at the same time and just like set one down and switch back and forth. I don't like doing that because it's hard for my brain to switch. But sometimes I will be able to do that. And I didn't think I could do it with this one. So I was like, I got to get through this book so that we can start this book.
Would you finish the current series we're on if we weren't doing it as a book club thing or a buddy read thing? Would you finish the series that we're currently on, or would you let it go? Because technically you let go of the Hockey Gods. You didn't finish the series. I know you're not going to.
I'm definitely not going to right now. But see that, I don't know. That's a totally, I feel like that's kind of a unicorn. Because it's like...
It's dark. It is considered one of the darkest romances.
It's not even that it's dark. It's that because I read that first book in a time that I was not in the headspace to be reading a book like that, I feel like it ruined it for me.
Yeah.
So I'm not invested in it enough to want to go to the next one as I normally would. But I think it's because of the trauma that I was dealing with at the time I read the first one, not because of the story not being interesting. It might be something that I have to like soft DNF the series and maybe even go back and read that book again now that I kind of know what I'm in for too, because boy, I did not know what I was in for when I started that book. I didn't think it was going to be nearly as dark as it was. And I'm a baby with dark romance. So,
but you kind of said everything that I said. If I'm not invested, if I don't care for this, like maybe I'm just easier about it. Like, that's the thing. I have DNF'd more series than I've DNF'd books. So there's one series that I DNF. I actually did DNF the book that I was on in the series because I hated it so much. I shouldn't have picked it up. I had done nothing but bitch and complain about that series to Tish. Started the second book, I think within an hour or two, I messaged her full of regrets. And I DNF'd the book and I DNF'd the series.
The series, the fact that I started it and didn't finish it is gonna haunt me. But right now,
take you to the grave.
It's gonna haunt me. But the fact that I had such a hard time, that trauma is winning out in that battle. Like trauma versus haunting, the trauma is winning right now. But later, when that's not so much of an issue, it's just going to be haunting me. So I'm going to go back and finish it. I just don't know if I'm going to do it right now.
I'm just thinking of an 80-plus-year-old Rubik's going, I never finished the Hockey God series. And it really bothering you.
It will, though. Like, those things do bother me. Not having something checked off on a list like that, it's going to bother me. It's just that even when I think about it now, because I see the books on Goodreads, I see the books on, on TikTok, or Instagram, I'll see something about it. I will be like, oh, I still need to finish that series. But right now it's like, not today. It's not happening anytime soon because I know myself. I know that I'm not in that headspace still. And if I'm going to put that much time into reading something, I want to enjoy it. So I'm going to wait until I'm in a better headspace for it. But it haunts me, and I will end up finishing it at some point because I have to.
I just can't wait for when that happens and you just randomly about Steele, because we all hated him. He's our least favorite, and he's the book you're about to start. Well, when you undo.
When I do it, yeah.
So I can't
watch me love him too, because that's the way it works.
You won't. No, I promise you, you will not. Because of certain things about him, you will not.
Okay. I'll trust you, but we'll see.
No, I promise. If you do, I'm going to send you to another therapist for a completely different reason. Because there are questions that will be had when it comes to if you're like, oh, it's not that bad.
I almost spit out my Coke.
Oh, no. Okay, but would you say you prefer plot-driven series then over interconnected standalone series?
Definitely.
See, I'm the opposite.
It's like
no one that can see my behind is nothing but interconnected standalone. That entire row up there is interconnected standalones from Anna Long and Elle Kennedy. Like, I love an interconnected standalone.
I prefer a plot-driven series because it's the same thing for me. Like when we talk about movies, you know how much I love movies. Okay.
Yeah.
All of my favorites are things like a series of movies.
That's true. Yeah.
Like, I love having multiple movies and going through them and having multiple stories and, you know, but they're all chunks of the same story. So I got to get through them all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can see now that I'm thinking about, like, yeah, your movie preference, like 90% of the movies that you're always trying to tell me to watch or you're watching are series.
Yeah. And there are a lot of standalone movies that I enjoy, but it's not the same. You know what I mean? Like,
are there a lot of interconnected standalone fantasies? Now that I'm thinking about it, is that even a prominent thing in like the fantasy realm, would you say?
I am not. I'm
thing
still
about
a baby. I don't know.
Interconnected standalones within the romance, some of the ones we've told you to read, it is a friend group, and then each friend in that group has a romance to go through.
Right.
Like the Twisted series, Kings of Greed, or the Kings of Sin series. This is the Legacy of God series, Never After series. Oh, that's actually a series. But yeah, most of mine are interconnected standalones because it's a friend group and each friend gets a story. Like in the Chestnut Springs, the cowboy one that I'm reading, that I know you'd actually enjoy because of how it's set up. It's brothers and their like childhood best friend is what that series is about. And I think that's why I like them, because with a series, it's still in order. I never read them out of order, to be fair, but there's something nice about this is all, book one is done. They're all neatly tied up in a bow. And then as you read into like books 2, 3, however many are in it, you get cute little snippets of them, which I enjoy over an epilogue because we both agree, not fans of epilogues in this. We, in the Booktrovert Babes podcast, are not fans of epilogues. Sometimes I skip them because sometimes
I never skip, but I just think, and it's not that I hate, hold on though. It's not that I hate epilogues. It's that I hate that they're normally cheesy.
Yes, we hate what is typically the recipe of an epilogue. Like, there's never anything new to them. Someone's got a baby, someone's getting engaged, someone's married. Like, it's never new, exciting.
Archer's Voice epilogue made me cry.
Oh yeah, I saw.
Like,
yeah,
when they're done well, they're not bad. They're still cheesy. I mean, that book, that whole book had a cheesy. It had notes of cheese, but it was so Gouda. See what I did there?
I do see what you did there. Because it was a little bit fluffy, if you would say. But I would say with interconnected standalones, I think that's the thing that appeals to me, is one story is done, but you get cute little snippets of it as you keep reading. But the 5th book of the series behind me, The Legacy of Gods, is the one I want you to read. And I know it drives you nuts that I want you to read book 5 of a series. But
yeah, I'm not going to do it.
I know. But here's the
I'm going to
thing.
start.
I am nervous for you to do that. Because, well, no, because you've already said that, like, you're going to go to your grave being so upset that you didn't finish the Hockey God series. So I guess maybe I'm safe with this one that you'll
Is that what I said, though? Hold on. Is that what I said? That is not what I said. If you
don't read it.
Hold on. I am not going to have you label me as I'm going to go to the grave angry I didn't read that series. That is not what I said. I said it will haunt me that I didn't finish it. Not that I will go to the grave angry.
Those will be your last words. Why didn't I finish it?
That's just a real exaggeration I'm not comfortable with.
Fine. But with this one, it's so hard because you could read it by itself. There are cutesy snippets from other people's POVs in the first 4 that you'll then see from their point of view in the 5th book. Ryan actually read the first book, was super invested, then kind of hated it towards the end. And I made him read the 5th one. He loved it. And he was happy that he skipped all these because he didn't really love the first one. So we kind of just dropped out. The 5th one is the fan favorite.
What series are we talking about here?
Legacy of Gods by Rena Kent. And I'm so excited because she just made an announcement today, the October 10th, that the book that we all really, really... So she had said she was done with this universe. So the 6th book was the last. She just announced today that she's actually going to do one more. And it's the couple everybody wanted. So I'm so excited. She just announced that it's actually, she pushed back.
Give the people what they want.
Literally, but she pushed back a book that was supposed to be coming out in March so that she could do this next book because it's how badly the fans wanted it. And
That is awesome.
So excited. I had a notification on Instagram. I was ready to go. I was like, I knew it's what she was saying, but also like at the same time, you don't want to get too excited.
Right.
But like, this is a series that you could read out of order. I think you do get a better experience reading it in order. That's the thing with interconnected standalones is they say you could, but I feel like you do get a better experience because you see little snippets of future couples in like the earlier books before their own book.
Yeah, I just can't do that. Like I can't read things out of order like that. I feel like the order that they were written is very indicative of how the story is supposed to flow from the author's perspective. It's the same thing with like, I'm one of those people that say when you watch the Star Wars series, you start with episode 4. You do not start with episode 1 because it ruins things. The plot twists in 4, 5, and 6, you don't have those shock and awe moments if you started with episode 1, 2, and 3. You have to start the way they came out, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm one of those people. So if the author writes them in a certain order, that's the way I want to read them, because otherwise I feel like I'm skipping ahead or skipping around. You know what I mean?
That reminds me of, you can't see it because I'm blocking it, the Throne of Glass series.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
But we haven't talked about it, how we're going to do it. I am going to read the series. I'm nervous to do it, but I'm going to.
We did talk about how we were going to do it.
You and I did, but we haven't said it like on the podcast that when we start the series together, we are going to read it differently to start.
I'm going to read it in the order that it was written.
And I'm going to read it in the order that it was intended when it comes
to chronological,
because there is a huge debate about the proper way to read the series, because technically Assassin's Blade came out 3rd or 4th. I am so sorry. I'm not that giant of a fan, so I'm not 100% sure when it came out publishing wise, but in the order of how it should go, it is supposed to go first because of where it takes place. And there's elements to it that make you appreciate the main character of the story more, from what I understand. But we've polled our friends who have read it, and even they're 50-50. Of the like 5 or 6 people, I think 6, or of the 6 people of our friends who have read it, 3 have read it where they did Throne of Glass first, 3 have read it where they did Assassin's Blade first.
Right.
So we decided we're going to do that. You're going to start with Throne of Glass. I'm going to start with Assassin's Blade, and then we'll kind of meet somewhere.
Because do you remember when we had that conversation? I said the very same thing about Star Wars. Like I asked, I was like, is this a Star Wars situation? Sorry for any spoilers. If you haven't seen Star Wars, it's your own fault. But if you, like, I asked in that discussion, is this going to be like a Darth Vader is Luke's father situation? And if I read Assassin's Blade first, am I not going to be surprised by that in Throne of Glass? Like, is that what we're looking at here? And I don't remember if that was ever said, but that was what I wanted to know. That's one of the big reasons why I won't read things out of order like that.
I think Ryan said kind of, and Tish said no. So that's again why we were like, we're just gonna split. We're gonna split it, and it'll
be a fun experiment.
It will be a fun. It's fun to have something where we could actually like live experiment with that, and we technically would have a buddy read for it.
I do remember Tish saying that she would not have cared about anything that happened in Assassin's Blade, except for the fact that she already was invested in the characters because of the books she read before that. That made a big difference to me as well. That's what made me feel like it was a Star Wars situation.
Yeah, so there's technically a novella that's supposed to, so for The Serpents and the Wings of it's the Crowns of Nyaxia, the series. Technically, there's a novella that is supposed to go in between The Serpents and the Wings of Night and The Ashes and the Star-Crossed King, I think is the name of the second one. That novella did come in between them. In the book, it is also, or in chronological order of it, it is in between them. I did read it before I read the second book. Haley didn't, and I actually told my mom not to either, because I do think if you wait and you read the novella after, it makes the story in the second one better, not knowing something about someone, because there's a little bit of a plot in the second one where you're like, if you haven't read the novella, you don't know how you feel about these characters. You don't know if you can even trust them. You don't know how their background went. I did read the novella. I already knew, so there was no surprise to anything when it came to them. And I still appreciated it, but I feel like it would have been more of a mystery of a, do I or do I not trust them? Do I or do I not believe their background had I not read the novella first? So I almost went, I am telling my mom to go against the author of how she wrote it and technically the order of how it's supposed to go too.
There's things like that in the Black Witch Chronicles with the little, like the 0.5 and 1.5 little...
Novellas really mess us up, man.
When it
comes to series orders, they throw it off the...
They do. Because technically, both of those, they're labeled as 0.5 and 1.5, right?
Yeah.
But they're technically both prequels.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't like reading them that way. I liked reading the first book first and reading them in the way that they came out, because it's when the story is like, here's where we started and we're going at a steady pace most of the time. We're going at a steady pace through what's gonna happen. And then those like novellas are like, here's filling in the details you've been wondering about. And that's why I like reading those after I'm already in the story. Because, I mean, am I going to care about the stuff that I'm getting back information on unless I've been reading one or two books through the series and I'm like, but why is this such a big deal? Well, then the novella, I get to that and then I'm like, oh, that's why it's a big deal. That's what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what's hard with interconnected standalones, is sometimes I do feel like the intended order makes sense, but sometimes certain things aren't necessary, like when it comes to novellas, or you could technically read it out of order, because there's another series that's not finished that is interconnected standalone. I read the first one. Mel accidentally read the second one and did not realize that she read the second one. It spoils nothing in the first one, other than, I mean, technically the spoiler is...
Did it spoil it?
I mean, technically it was like the couples together, but that, like, you know that going into a romance book, that like the end game of this, happily ever after, the couple is together. So
yeah,
but she accidentally read it. She had seen what the tropes were and stuff like that, and so she read it. As she was reading, she saw on Goodreads the, like, in parentheses, the name of the series, and clicked it, and it said she was reading book 2. So she accidentally read the second book of the series.
Yeah. I'd be freaking out. I would stop and go get the first book and not finish. That's what I would do. I've done that before, where I looked at it and it's like right before I'm going to start reading it, and I'm like, no,
sure about that?
I'm going to go read the first one.
You sure about that?
What do you mean?
Did you not just read a series on accident where you were technically reading book what would be 4 of something within the same universe with Stephanie Garber?
Okay, but I didn't know until after I finished it.
I know, but you technically did accidentally read something out of order in that series, because you
but I didn't find out.
3.
What I'm saying is if I see that I accidentally started the book, I'm going to stop it and
so
go
are you
finish.
Not going to book 2 of Once Upon a Broken Heart before you have to finish finale, right?
I have to finish finale,
and then you'll go back to do.
And I might even reread Once Upon a Broken Heart once I finish finale, because now it'll make sense. There was a lot that I was like, what? I don't get it, but I kind of just go with it because I didn't realize it was part of the Caraval series. So I was like, I guess if I was supposed to know that, I would know that. So maybe I'm not supposed to get it. I was just trusting the author.
I just liked your live reaction when you were telling me that you were like, I'm reading these 2 books and there's like a lot of similarities. And then it just dawned on you that it was by this, and I was like, well, yeah. I
was like, how is the MMC the same name? That's so weird.
Because I was like, yeah, because it's intended to be read after that series. I had thought, because I had been seeing your Goodreads update, and sometimes you don't edit as soon as you finish, like some of us. So I had thought that you had finished finale, and that's why you were I thought you knew, especially because they were both by Stephanie Garber, but your live reaction to being like, oops.
Whoopsie.
So you technically on accident did read a series somewhat out of order, which is hilarious.
I did.
Like,
I'm dying over it too, because I'm so mad at myself because of it. Because I'm like, I probably missed so much in Once Upon a Broken Heart because I didn't realize the connections in whatever happens in finale. Like
Yeah.
I'm angry about it, and I'll probably reread it, and I will probably understand it better and like it more, because that was I'm sitting here like I wanted to like that book more, but there were some plot holes. No, there weren't. I'm just dumb.
I wanted to like it more, but it's book 4, and I'm still. The best part is you were reading book 2 at the same time that you were technically reading book 4.
I'm telling you, there were so many times where I'm just dumb, okay? There were so many times where I'm like, I'm so confused. Which book am I reading? And I still didn't realize it was the same series.
Whoopsie. But, okay, so you'll
Listen,
go back,
mistakes were
finish
made,
3,
okay?
reread 4, so it makes sense. Maybe you'll be nicer to that book now knowing it's technically sort of kind of book 4.
I think I will. Because, I mean, I did like it. I just wanted to like it more.
I've heard good things, so
yeah.
Hopefully you're nicer now that you know it's in an interconnected series within the same universe. Because that's what, I think I've told you this, I had a challenge for myself to read Rena Kent's entire backlog in order. Because the thing with Rena Kent, she has 34 published books in the exact same universe. I had told because my reward is the last 6 books of the 34 is the Legacy of God series, is these 6 books that I loved. However, I got a little impatient. I read the first 18 books, and I saw on Goodreads Miss Tish was reading that one, and I was like,
oh.
You can't read that series without me. I'm on book 18. Like, let me get to book, I think, like 27, and I'll be there with you. And she's like, no, I'm not waiting for you to read that many books. So I sort of kind of had to skip because I was like, you can't read that series without me. I'm the reason you've heard of this series. What do you mean? So I technically skipped books 19 through 25, which, I mean, not a ton, but
that is a ton to me.
It's a lot of books, but it is so interesting, and it is a series. It's interconnected universe series of 34 books. You don't have to read them all in order. I appreciate that I read at least, so the ones that I read before these are all, this is the second generation. The books I read are all of their parents.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it because you do see snippets, and in each one of these books, there is one chapter from a POV of one of their parents. So it was kind of nice because I knew the parents from reading their books and their couplings and their relationship from before that Tish didn't understand because she didn't read it, but she didn't really know that she didn't know because of the way it's written. So I guess it's hard with interconnected standalones to know, like, do you need to read them in order? Technically, no, but you get a little bit more if you did read it in order.
Okay, so still a baby here. All right. So I got to go to movies.
Of course.
What that makes me think of is the Conjuring universe. I know you haven't seen those because you don't do scary movies.
I'm so proud of you for knowing ahead of time that I don't know what you're talking about.
I already know that you don't know what I'm talking about. It's fine. I've accepted this. But
oh, that's the nicest thing you've said to me today.
Get out. No, it's not. I hate you.
I said today.
But the Conjuring universe is a bunch of interconnected standalones. Like, there's some plot driven things in there. But the way they came out all mixed. So it came out, it's like The Conjuring, and then I think Annabelle came next.
I did not realize that Annabelle was a part of The Conjuring.
It's part of the universe, okay? Because the Conjuring, it's called the Conjuring universe because the Conjuring universe is centered around 2 characters, Ed and Lorraine Warren. And
the Warrens?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the thing about The Conjuring is while I haven't seen them, I love hauntings, like real life haunting things. I've watched so many shows about the Annabelle doll and the Warren family.
Yes.
Like, I've watched a ton with Tish. Like, we've watched, like, Ghost Adventures did something on them. Oh god, it's not what they're called, but they call themselves the Ghoulie Boys. But that is not. It's Ryan and Shane, who used to be with BuzzFeed. Unsolved.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
But now they have something else because they're not with BuzzFeed anymore. But they call themselves the Ghoulie Boys, and that's what we always call them. So I was like, I don't remember the name of their actual show. But we've watched a ton of shows cover them. I just didn't realize, I guess, that The Conjuring was about that.
Yeah, because what it is, the reason why it's connected is because the Warrens are in possession of
the doll.
Annabelle.
Yeah.
Yeah, of the doll. So, and that's the thing. The Warrens have like a museum of haunted, artifacts and whatever.
Yep.
And so that's the thing is the Conjuring movies that have The Conjuring in the title have Ed and Lorraine Warren in them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're separate hauntings, but there is an element that goes through their story. Everything else is kind of spin-offs. So Annabelle is an artifact that they have possession of right now. So Annabelle has 3 movies. And then there's an element that goes through the Conjuring movies that's the same, is The Nun. And so now there's The Nun and The Nun 2. Those are The Nun that is involved in the Conjuring trilogy there. Then there's La Llorona, which is very loosely connected, because really the only connection that you see is the priest from the original Annabelle film is in that one for like a minute. Like it's like a cameo, and he mentions the doll. That's pretty much the only connection. But so they're kind of like a bunch of interconnected standalone series almost. And so I see them as like spin-offs.
Yeah.
But if I'm watching them all, which I do every year, a couple of times, I go through them all. But I watch them in the order they came out. I either watch them in the order that they came out, or if I want to just focus on I'll just watch the 3 Annabelle movies, which can be weird because it comes out Annabelle and then Annabelle Creation, which is its prequel. And then it's Annabelle Comes Home or Coming Home or something like that. So it's like 2, 1, 3 chronologically. Okay. So, but it does that, but the other movies don't do that. You know what I mean? Everything else is mostly in chronological order, so it's kind of like a mishmash. But because it's separated enough, I can pick and choose. I'll either go through chronologically with Annabelle, or I'll go through in the order they came out. I'll go through The Conjuring in the order that they came out specifically. And then The Nun, I'll go through in the order that they came out. But then also the Nun movies take place before the Conjuring movies in timeline.
Oh, okay.
But they came out after, so it's like a mishmash. Yeah,
so kind of like with the Rena Kent universe, technically this very top book I have, The Cruel King, it's book 0 of the entire universe, because they're not technically a part of the royal elite, because it's the cousin of like the main from the royal elite. He's a year older, but he's the main parent to like everyone in Legacy of Gods. But in that book, her best friend is mentioned, and then her stepsister. Their book is book 15. So it's years later, but you got to see the development of how they hated each other as teenagers in that book.
Oh, okay.
So like you have their backstory without even knowing it is in book 0, but their story is book 15.
Yeah, that's why when you were describing those, I was like, that sounds a lot like the Conjuring universe.
The Rena Kent universe is so cool to me because of how, like, I have a notebook where I wrote down, because there's 34 books, I wrote down within each series. So technically the first series is books 0 through 7, and it has an epilogue-ish book where it just wrapped up all of the couples, is book 8 or 9. But technically before you read book 9, you're supposed to read books 10, 11, and 12, and then read book 9 in that order. So I had to write down the order that Rena Kent tells you to do it, because not necessarily the way she published it is how you're supposed to read it. So that's what's so interesting about how she does it. But I had to write it down because there is at least one character from the one prior that you need or connects you to the next one. So like the guy that you meet in books 10, 11, and 12, his story is book 13. But you're supposed to read book 9 before you read book 13, because you get even more information about him from that. And then his kid is books like 29 and 30. It's like, it's just the way, like, I was like, this woman has to have like one of those, you know, in the police station, how they have like the board and there's like this string attaches to this one, like this, like, I swear, yes, but I'm like, Rena Kent has to have one of these, because I mean, to have a 34 book universe where like parents are involved, there's step siblings, and there's like cousins, because of how the books in like the teen, like she has to have one of those boards to connect everybody.
Right.
Like I love seeing people on TikTok bring out like whiteboards you would see in a classroom, and they're just breaking it down for anyone who hasn't read the Renaverse, as it's called on TikTok. Like these people are this way, but that's how you get them in these books. Like it's so interesting.
Do you like series like that more than you like just a straight through series?
Yeah, because there's something about, again, they're interconnected standalone. I don't actually have to read some of them. Some of them, there's only like tiny little pieces that connect them to the 34 book series or universe rather. I think that's what I like. I like the universe aspect of it. Of I can see snippets of other people. I can see the connections. I don't necessarily have to read them though to appreciate. Like if I got rid of the Royal Elite series for who's half of the parents in these books, I can still love these books for what they are. I just have more appreciation because I read their parents first.
Right.
But again, Tish loves this series. Well, she didn't finish. Tish is someone who does not complete series. That girl will DNF series like it's nobody's business and drive me insane about it. Because she does it on the last. She does it on the last book. She didn't finish the 6th book of this. She didn't read the last book of Voice of Tommen. She didn't read the last book from another series that I'm trying to get her to read.
Could never do that.
We'll read every book but the last one.
No.
I will say, if I got to that point, if I were to find out that the next one is the last one of the ACOTAR, I'll read it. I can't not finish the last book. I'll drop out when there's still 3-4 more books to go.
Sure.
You can't drop out on the last one. That is against the rules.
Yeah.
You've already made it this far.
I'm so glad you said that. I feel like we're a little bit closer now.
Yes.
I was like, what's wrong with you?
I was looking, I was like, wait a minute. She didn't finish this one. She didn't finish that one. Like, she infamously won't finish the last book of series. That bothers me. Like, you've already made it this far. Just go.
Yeah, I couldn't do that. I think that with the interconnected standalones, it would be easier for me to not finish the series because I don't really see it as a series of interconnected standalones. I see it as whatever the first book was is the story and everything else is a spin-off. And I'll watch the spin-offs of shows. I'll watch spin-offs of movies. I like them. I'll enjoy them, but I won't consider them part of the same series necessarily. You know, like Grey's Anatomy is a good example of that. Grey's Anatomy, I've watched every episode up to now.
Yeah, I dropped out.
No, I've watched every episode. I think
know,
actually technically twice because maybe actually 3 times because I've been in 2 different relationships that like, you have to watch these with me. And so I started over with them so they could
You are a good woman because fuck that. I would make that's like 22 seasons. No.
Uh-huh. But
no.
Grey's Anatomy has 2 spinoffs. They have Private Practice and then they have Station 19. When Private Practice was going, there was a lot that happened that now they talk about in Grey's where without that information, I mean, they kind of like Shonda's a goddess. So she kind of gets around it where you don't have to know what happens. She'll fill you in on enough.
Because Amelia's from Private Practice, but technically she's the sibling of Derek, right?
McDreamy. Yeah.
McDreamy. So technically, like, she's a related to someone from Grey's Anatomy, but they brought her in with Private Practice, but now she's in Grey's Anatomy.
And McDreamy's ex-wife is the main female character of Private Practice.
Yep.
So she was from the very beginning of Grey's, and then we saw her in Private Practice. And so, like, the stories are important, but you can watch Grey's without watching Private Practice ever. Now, Station 19 is a little bit different because they do even more episodes where there's combined storylines, and you have, you know, Bailey is in Grey's Anatomy and her husband Ben Warren is in Station 19.
I knew he was something that made it very easy to connect them together. Okay.
Yeah. So like those two, they do so many episodes where like, you know, Ben and Bailey are talking and their relationship is something that strings through both series. So you'll miss parts of their relationship stuff if you only watch Grey's or if you only watch Station 19. There's also like if there's a big thing, you know, like a huge fire that's impacting the hospital, you got to watch both episodes to really understand what's going on, but they're still spinoffs. You can still watch all of Grey's without ever watching the other two. You miss bits and bobbles, and you miss things that make it more. There's a lot of stuff that happened in Private Practice that you don't have to know. She'll fill you in on enough of it in the Grey's episodes, but whatever's affecting her in that episode that has to do with what happened in Private Practice, you get more impact from it if you have seen Private Practice. And God, I bawled my eyes out in Private Practice, so I'm all for it. But you can do it without.
Yeah.
But
all right.
I prefer to watch all of it. But Grey's Anatomy is the series, and those other ones are spinoffs. I won't consider them like all.
I will concede about making you read book 5 of the Legacy of God series, that you can start with book 1, but you have to promise me you'll make it to book 5.
I will.
Because it's so
I
good.
will.
I have reread that book twice. I'm planning on reading it again next month. Don't judge me.
Sam, we have buddy reads to get through.
I know. I'm saying I'm going to read book 5 next month. We don't have any buddy reads planned for November. Don't judge me
yet.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We hope you enjoyed the vibes. If you want to keep up to date, make sure you're following us on Instagram and TikTok.
And if you want to watch us live over on Twitch, we stream every Friday. We've been talking about all of our spooky books we've been reading this month. If you have any last minute ideas to throw in at us that you want us to read, and if you miss, we'll post it on YouTube later so you can watch as well.
Till next time, you are awesome. You're doing great.
I love you. Now stop stalling and go read that book.
Bye.